to see a client that came in for intake. This is going to be her first session to our clinic, and she is a 22-year-old young black female who recently graduated from college in Alabama, and she graduated at a very prestigious college for biomedical science. According to the intake information, she's having some conflict with and some issues with anxiety and with depression that has been causing her to have problems with her sleeping and also with her eating. She recently graduated on May 23rd, and she is currently has moved back at home with her family. She is, as far as birth order, she is the second oldest child in a family of 3 children, and she's never been in any form of treatment at all whatsoever. So, like I said, she comes in for the issue of having some forms of depression. I'm looking based on the intake information I have received from her. I will be using 3 different types of modalities with her. I will be looking at using motivation interviewing. Motivation interviewing is normally used with a lot of different patients for change and to look at maladaptive behaviors. That's a key component with motivational interviewing. The goal of motivation interviewing is for the therapist to be able to have a better understanding of what the client needs and also look at their strengths. Hugely important. It also looks at areas that they may have some resistance for treatment. Motivation interviewing is normally been used in substance abuse and also with people who do not want to make any type of change or have resistance to psychotherapy. It can be used with all cultures because with all cultures they have different ideas of what treatment's about and they may have their own resistance. So motivation interviewing works very well with all cultures and all different ages, so I think that would be appropriate with this particular client. I will also be looking at Rogerian as well. With Rogerian, I like a whole lot because it focuses on positive regard. It gives people a sense of hope. It was originally started by Carl Rogers, and with Rogerian therapy, it also looks at what are one's strengths. It uses a form of empathy to do so. And I think that's very, very important to do that with this particular individual. Keep in mind that she is, like I said, 22 years old. That puts her right in the middle of stage 6 of Erickson's stages of development, which is intimacy versus isolation. And within that stage, the intimacy area is definitely fueled by one's fidelity to commitment. And that commitment can be not only to relationships, but also commitment to work, career aspirations, and a variety of different things that if it's not addressed very well, it can lead to isolation. So that's something else that, like I said, the Rogerian theory will work very well with that as we look at this particular age group. And lastly, I'm going to look at CBT. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy by Beck is very, very helpful with all different populations. Culturally, it has been able to work with major depressive disorder patients, people with bipolar, even in some schizophrenics, they have been able to use some CBT. The reason why CBT is so important, the main element with CBT is that it focuses on looking at any type of distortions one has, cognitive distortions, to try to dispel some of that. It looks at one's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and looks at core beliefs and false assumptions. And with the age of 22 years old, it's very possible to have some cognitive distortions that may be based on her core beliefs that she's had as a young child. It could be family expectations. It can be a variety of different things that can be fueling that. So I definitely will be looking at all 3 of those treatment modalities, blending them into one. I think it would be a good blend to be able to find out what are some of her strengths, some of her weaknesses, and to help give her a sense of hope. And that will be the ultimate goal of this type of first session I have with her. So as I get ready to begin, I'm going to go ahead and welcome her in. As I mentioned to you before, all 3 dynamics of different treatment modalities work well with all different cultures, and it works with all different diagnoses as well. So I'm going to go ahead and enter her in right now into our session. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Glad that you were able to come. Now, before I begin, I first want to consent with you. Is it okay if we videotape this session as I'm trying to gain more understanding of you?
It's all right.
All right, great. So what brought you in today?
Well, I just got back home for been like a month now, and I've been just going through back and forth emotions, like being really sad one day, being okay the next day, and I'm coming from I don't really know what exactly, but it's been a weird transition period. I've been reflecting a lot on like the past 4 years, just how things have changed and how whether or not I'm happy with those changes, whether or not I like those changes, and trying to prepare for what's coming next, and not knowing how everything's going to work out or what's going to be okay and what's not. And so just looking at all that, I don't know, but I've been very back and forth with everything.
Sounds like it's been very troubling for you going back and forth like that, huh?
Mhm.
So tell me, first of all, I want to tell you congratulations on graduating. That's a wonderful accomplishment. That must be a very hard thing, but I'm glad that you were able to make it through.
Mhm.
Have you ever been in treatment beforehand?
Not formal treatment. I've done like a couple of therapy sessions at the university when I was stressed out during the year, but nothing for real.
Okay. So I was reading your intake that you're feeling very hopeless and it's affecting your eating and sleeping. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. I actually haven't slept through a night since I've been home. I don't. That's really weird, and because I sleep all the time when I was at school, and I've been eating more than normal, or maybe it's normal. I just wasn't aware of it, but yeah. And yeah, it's just when the sadness can really come like out of nowhere, and then it's just there, and I don't know what to do about it. And it's like there's just like a little cloud in my heart, and I didn't know why, or I didn't really want to talk to anybody, and just yeah, but it could be triggered by anything, and then it would just happen, and I wasn't okay. And if I try to stifle it, then it would just hit me harder later. So yeah, but I don't know.
This must be very hard for you.
Mhm.
When you say that you haven't been sleeping, how many hours are you talking about per night, would you say?
Well, it's kind of still a summer schedule, so I'm still like staying up late. But I, I don't know how many hours. Maybe I try to get at least like 6, but I don't sleep straight through the night. I'll always wake up at least once, for I don't even know how long, but I don't sleep through a night all the way.
Okay. Are you able to get to sleep, or is it more just getting up in the middle of the night?
I'm also slow to sleep. It always takes me a while to fall asleep unless I'm exhausted.
Okay. How is your consumption of caffeine?
I try not to drink coffee all the time. I just got back from a job training. I would have coffee every day because I was tired every day because we had late nights and early mornings. But regularly, I try not to drink coffee all the time.
Okay. And have you noticed is the sadness feeling coming up only now, or has it ever happened to you before in the past?
I think it has happened in the past. At different periods in school, I would always go through like a couple week period where I just called it like a slump because I just didn't feel like myself. I felt really sad and just like I didn't want to do anything. It would go away and I'll be okay. But I would always get that, I think at least like once a year I would get it.
Tell me more about that when you say once a year. What do you mean?
Once a school year, I mean, or at least. But it would normally come maybe in the middle of the semester, near the end of the semester. Because when everything starts, you just get back to school, it's happy. But then once everything hits and it starts to get, and there's a lot going on, just all the responsibilities I had, I would just, I don't know, I would just be sad. And it would come out of nowhere. And then I just, inside, I could carry on with my day, but inside I just didn't feel all together. I didn't feel all right. But I didn't know where it came from. And then it would go away, so I would be fine. So I just didn't think anything of it.
Does this time feel like the same time?
This feels worse. It feels more persistent, maybe. But I mean, I guess it's been about maybe the same. But I think when I was in school, I could just keep going because I just had things to do, so I would just keep going. But I think since I have time now to just sit and think about all of it, it's hitting more than usual.
It's kind of overwhelming now.
Mm-hmm. Just a little bit.
What have you been doing to help yourself with this?
I journal. I journal every night. I used to just journal about like things that I would do every day, but I had to be more intentional about journaling about how I was feeling about things specifically. So I make sure I always just talk about things, but also how it made me feel and what I thought about that. And So I journal every day. I try to exercise when I can. Try to talk to, my family and friends that can normally lift me up, but sometimes I really don't feel like talking to anybody. So, but that's pretty much it. Probably the journaling is the thing I'm most consistent with.
So you've been feeling very isolative.
A little bit. A little bit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've been having more of this. It's gotten worse than it was before in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And you've had a little bit of this before when you were in college.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like when you were in college, you went to see someone, talk to someone before in the past. When you went to talk to them in the past, what did you identify were some of the issues that you had?
Honestly, I can't really remember because I didn't think that they were that good at what they were doing to help me. So, but we did. I remember I was going through a lot of conflict. This was like before the end of my junior year, because I wanted to go on like a trip with my choir in the summer, but then I also needed to study for the MCAT so I could prepare for, med school applications and stuff. And I remember I was seeing him about just other stuff, but I remember talking about stuff like that and just the conflicts that I always felt, and me trying to accommodate, feeling like I had to do this and feeling all my obligations and just trying to accommodate everything. But he was sort of helpful. I can't remember what we identified. We talked about a lot of the fears that I have with things in general, but I can't remember specifically what we talked about.
But this time it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
This one is a bigger thing. You just got to graduate now. This life is happening, right? In your journaling that you mentioned, what do you journal about in journal?
Normally just day to day, the things I got to do, the things that I thought were funny or that made me happy, or the things that really upset me. Especially if something really bothered me in the day, I'll probably just go in and talk about that for the whole time, just analyzing what happened, why I thought it happened, how it's resonating within me, and until I just make sure I get it all out and talk about everything.
Well, I want to definitely say that I think that's a wonderful thing that you're journaling, because sometimes journaling is very, very, very helpful to be able to talk about some of the things that we have going on internally inside of ourselves. But one of the things I also want to look at is, do you ever go back and look at when you're journaling, specifically as far as your feelings that's causing you to feel as deeply as you are right now, pertain to all your turmoil?
Do you ever go back and look at it? No, not when I'm in a mode like this. I don't normally go back and look at other bad times. I don't. Maybe I'll go if I'm like in a happy space. Sometimes I'll go back, just look at different things I wrote about and whatnot. But no, not regularly.
What stops you from doing that?
I guess I just don't think to. I don't know if it would be helpful to, because I don't always have like a resolution or anything. It's just putting everything out there. Sometimes when I have done that, maybe once or twice, I look back and I think that it was blown out of proportion in my mind, the way things made me feel. But that doesn't happen all the time. I don't always look back at it.
But the reason why I mention that is that sometimes when we look back at painful situations, there sometimes is a thread as to why those things happen and why things are happening right now. We don't know it until we look at it. Because a lot of times what happens is our thoughts go back to our feelings, and then it causes us to act a certain way. Sometimes when we're in painful situations, it's kind of very hard to do that, though. It prevents us from doing that. Would you be interested if we schedule more time to be able to start looking at some of these things a little bit at a time? Not a lot, because it can be kind of painful, but maybe a little bit at a time, taking maybe one situation, not all of them, but one that's a safer one to look at, and very reviewing it and looking at it and seeing what was it that was so painful, and seeing if it relates to how it is right now. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I could do that.
That's good to hear, because here's what I'm thinking in that regard. I'm wondering if that any type of assumptions or way we see things, if there was it can be sometimes not looked upon the same right lens. Like looking through a camera can be kind of distorted if it's cloudy when you take pictures. And that cloudy lens can make things kind of distorted. So I'm wondering if the way you see things at that time may be a little different. And if we look at how it was, perhaps we can look at it from a different lens and then get a capsized view of what things are going on right now that's causing turmoil for you. Because I'm concerned about you not sleeping. Sleeping is a very important thing. That distorts our way how we view things. I'm concerned about you, how you're saying about your eating in that regard, because that tells me those are some things that relate to symptoms of depression. And I'm glad that you came in. That's a good positive strength. So I'm glad you came in. And I know it was very difficult for you to come in this time, so I want to admire you and say thank you for coming in. But most importantly, I want you to also know that we can look at some of those elements, and if we can start, I'm going to give you some exercises coming up that we can work on, and if you're willing to, I think maybe we can capture some of these different elements. You willing to work on that?
I am.
Okay, it's good to hear. So as I end my session with this particular client, the goal will be for me to work on a lot more of the CBT and look at more of the false assumptions that she's maybe having. I am concerned about, as I mentioned to the client, with her feelings of depression, and want to look at that for the next session to see whether or not the depression that she has ever been more sense of hopelessness and helplessness to having any suicide ideations. I didn't want to go into that particularly right now because I really just want to give her a sense of hope. I wanted to let her know that I understand. I want to just give her empathy and also acknowledge that feeling she may have. This ends this session with this particular client. Thank you.